What is it that we are resisting against? We are resisting against a system of racism, of sexism, of homophobia. We're resisting against our bosses who are treating us badly, and we're resisting against exploitation and injustice, which is why we need to keep resisting. Why do we want to resist? We want to resist because we want to change other people's ideas, don't we? We want them to stop being racist and homophobic. And we want to defend each other. We want to stand shoulder to shoulder with each other when we're being oppressed, when we're having sexist attacks, etc. And we want to change the system, because it's the system and those that uphold the system, the bosses, the dictators, the ruling class that are oppressing us. It's these people that we want to resist against and change the system. People don't just resist and rise up, and they have done throughout history. They don't just do it for the fun of it. The suffragettes, 100 years ago, went around with little toffee hammers breaking windows. Not because it's a fun thing to do. They did it because they wanted to be able to vote. Gay people, LGBT people in America didn't riot in Stonewall because they wanted to. They did it because they had to, because they were facing massive homophobia from the community. And students in Millbank in December didn't break windows at the Tory party headquarters because they wanted to ruin their future. They did it because we have to, because the government is taking away future prospects for millions and millions of young people. There was a young man, I don't know if you saw him on the news now, he was about 15 or something, he said, "We're from the slums of East London." Did anybody hear this quote? Brilliant, wasn't it? "We're from the slums of East London. You're taking away our education. You're taking away our EMA. And then you're going to wonder why we have to sell drugs to look after ourselves. And then you're going to blame us." A 15-year-old that's put into a sentence ideas that are sometimes so debated for so long and seem so profound. What brilliant political clarity. Don't tell me that young people are not interested in politics and don't want to fight back. That was brilliant. And I'm sure you've all seen the demonstrations, the student demonstrations. As John was saying, majority of the time, it was like a carnival. People bought sound systems. Our friends here, our friends that have been organising this meeting tonight, bring sound systems, organising open mics. Someone rocked up with a big thing of sandwiches and drinks. People were dancing, people were hugging each other, people were running away from the police and preventing themselves being kettled. Brilliant students, you've been absolutely brilliant. And you've given so much confidence to everybody else in Britain, well in fact in the world I'm sure. In fact I know for a fact that there have been students involved in everything in Tunisia and Egypt and all the other places that are resisting. So students, what you're doing is absolutely vital. I've received thousands of letters and emails and messages and stuff from people, handwritten letters as well. Letters from people who say their mum is a student and she's so pleased that we're defending her right to an education as a mature student. I've had a handwritten letter from an ex-police officer sending us a tenner for the fund, saying how proud he is of the brave students, how inspiring you are. So I think you should all give yourself a bit of a round of applause. We were just chatting about doing something like, following on from Egypt, 18 days of action. Maybe we could start a countdown 18 days before the demonstration. I don't quite know exactly what we're going to do yet, but I think we can definitely find 18 things to do leading up to that. So if anybody wants to get involved in organising that, because it's obviously going to be a bit of a mammoth task, do find London Student Assembly on Facebook. It's a person, and then we can send out organising meetings from that. Do come along to the London Student Assemblies actually. The next one's on February the 27th, which is here in this room, just about a week away. It's where we all very democratically plan some of the things that we're going to do. We understand that lots of people want to do lots of other things as well, but when it's a big massive action, when we need to brief stewards so that we can look after ourselves and know how to deal with the police and stuff so we don't get hit over the head, we plan it at London Student Assembly, so do come along to that.
This talk about democracy is really, it's neither here nor there. It's not about democracy. Did the United States care about democracy when in Chile they elected Allende? Did they care about democracy in Congo when they elected Lumumba? Did they care about democracy in Venezuela when they elect Chavez? Did they care about democracy in Palestine when they elect Hamas? they care about democracy in Lebanon when it empowers Hezbollah. Do they care about this democracy? No, they don't. They don't. And this must always be forefront in our minds that it is about protecting interests. Simple and plain. What are the interests? The interests are protecting Israel's expansion and the expansion of US military bases and all of the nasty, disgusting corporate interests they have around the world. That's what it's about. It's about protecting that. It's about having the most acceptable face upon this system. What can make it most acceptable for people? Well, when these dictators that they've been backing for the past 3 decades are killing people in the streets with British guns and with American guns, it's safe to say all of a sudden the face isn't acceptable. The face isn't acceptable. But you see, we know the substance. Forget the image. Forget the name they try and put on things, and it's important to realise there's been a complete media blackout on what's happening in Iraq. There are uprisings going on in Iraq, and people are protesting all over Iraq. But of course, that's not in the interest. It's not in the interest.
One particular thing, and I think that grates with me constantly, is this myth that's put about that somehow the people in the Middle East and North Africa are somehow feckless and incapable of organising their own lives. And this is really heavily propagated in the West. And I think the imperial terminology is the white man's burden, that they need us to structure their lives. Somehow what we've seen is that myth turned upside down. You know, it's completely fallen apart. And I think that is fantastic, that is crumbling, that idea that they need us because they've taken control. Fantastic. Now on the subject of resistance, I'll try and draw on my experiences and try and offer what I can. But the first and most central kind of salient point for me when I was kind of nose to nose with the establishment is solidarity. And you can't do it on your own. And that's really, really important to me. You need other people, you know, you need to have that support. The army use a kind of model of this, and they go on about comradeship and you know, they completely kind of hijack this idea of solidarity, because they use it in a way that you should have it and stimulate it and develop this idea of a connection to your fellow human being, unless they're someone who's sat on oil that your country wants, or unless they're an Afghan defending their home. And to me, I've challenged that view and I refute it completely. In a fight, and we are in a fight, we're in a battle essentially, you can't afford to cut people out on the basis of their religion or whether, you know, what their interests clash with your country's interests, or whatever. You need everyone you can, and to me that's a central point. You need that solidarity, and it needs to be stimulated. You can't fight these false battles. And the second point, which was really important to me when I was resisting, is belief. And it's a really hard thing to grip, but we can see the value of it in Egypt and in Tunisia and throughout these countries that are now kicking off. Self-belief. It takes a long time to develop it sometimes, but it's incredibly important. And as you can see, right now people are starting to believe, and you can see that. And you can see these barriers that are breaking down. I mean, the classic example, I saw a fantastic image of Christians guarding Muslims who were praying in Tahrir Square. And that's the energy. That's the energy that we need. And for me, I mean, you know, they kept trying to threaten me when I was resisting after I refused to go back to Afghanistan. But they were threatening me with years in prison. Thank you. But you can imagine the courage. Years in prison is pretty bad. But in places like Egypt, the regimes that we prop up, they torture people and they kill people. You can imagine the courage it takes to stand up there. And now they're talking about Saudi Arabia and places like that. But these people are fantastic. You know, really need to show that. And that's the value of belief when you kind of fight it, when you're backed into a corner. And when it starts developing, other things follow. You know, you start to become more assertive and more confident. And not aggressive, but, you know, more assertive and go at them. And that's what we've seen. And they seem to be doing it with such humour as well, particularly in the images I've seen of Egypt. You know, they seem to be taking the mickey with it as well, with the idea of the dead, carrying the dead sheep into the square. Stuff like that. And you need that. It's a real camaraderie developing there. And I think the end game of that, all these things that develop through solidarity and having that belief and confidence and being more assertive. And the end game of that is change and victory. And we've seen that. That's happening. They aren't finished in Egypt, of course, it's still going, but they're on the right road. It's happening. We can see the results of that. There's an example right there. You know, you can see it. And you can see how powerful a force it is. And I think with each victory, so they've won a big one, but with each one you become more confident and more assertive. And you start to see that what you face isn't insurmountable. You start to see that it's, you know, in effect a kind of paper tiger, and it can be challenged, and it can be ground down. And when you create friction, it will erode, and you can do stuff and assert yourself. And then obviously there are other considerations, in my view. You know, you have to be tactical about what you're doing, but the basic thing, I think you need, the basic things, the basic, you know, really conspicuous, you know, values you need are solidarity and belief. And that certainly helped me through my process. You look at Mubarak and you look at these nutters who we prop up, who torment their people, and they're dug in, and he was dug in for 30 years, like some big, kind of bloated leech. And you see what I mean? They got rid of him in 2.5 weeks. Now, I'm all for one-upmanship and I'm all for competition, but I reckon, if I wasn't a broke student, I'd probably put money on it, that we could probably get rid of Nick and Dave in